Thank you. Well, my second presentation is a model study we've done, also in this same demand from the dairy industry. Well, the background, as I said, we had voluntary programs for 20 years, and the last years there has been a discussion on mandatory again. What's important, we talked about BoHV1, but really a little more into detail for the disease, because this is an important input parameter for the model, is the difference between acutely infected cattle and latently infected cattle. The latently, of course, once they had it, they keep antibodies lifelong, and when in stressful situations they might reactivate, and this is very important feature in our model. Well, all these talks, the last 4 to 5 years, finally led to the mandatory eradication of IBR on dairy farms, starting last April again. So we're back on track, as to say. So we're starting to become a free country again. Of course, this will take a while. This will take some cow generations. But we're already with this study thinking ahead. What if in about 8 to 10 years, that's our horizon, if we're free, what is then the risk of introducing IBR? Because national trade then, of course, isn't a risk anymore. And we're a trading country, also for livestock. So the biggest threat then will be the introduction through imports. And imports, of course, could be live animals, but also semen, embryos, the trucks that are contaminated with the virus, possibly wildlife crossing the border, etc. Well, we looked at this and found that live animals are by far the most important risk, how the virus could be reintroduced. And as a small country, we import on a yearly basis almost 1 million cows. That's enormous. Most of them are young, really young veal calves for the veal industry. They're important up to age of 3 to 4 weeks, are then fattened and are slaughtered at about 5 to 6 months. But we also a substantial number of 60,000 adult cows coming into the country. So this poses a risk, of course, but we wanted to quantify that. And we also thought of what actions can we take to reduce this risk. So we had a couple of scenarios that we also calculated in the model to see what that did. So the risk we're looking at is really the probability of introduction. We didn't look up subsequent impact, so not the economics of the risk, and not the spread once an imported infected animal is arrived on a Dutch farm, not the spread on the farm or the spread to other farms. We didn't assess that. Well, once an animal comes to the Netherlands, the biggest chance of it, of course, we saw the big numbers, is that it goes to a veal herd type, but we defined 6 other herd types in Holland that where it's possible that the animal ends up. A lot of the adult cows end up here, especially from France. We get a lot of bulls that are fattened in Holland. The dairy industry, of course, the small scale is defined as less than 20 animals. And this I talked in my other presentation. This is directly linked to dairy industry mostly. These are heifer growers for the dairy industry. So also they get animals from abroad. Altogether we have a little, almost 40,000 ruminant or bovine holdings in Holland. Well, what were the aims of the study? To quantify the import risk of IBR with a stochastic simulation, and then to see what measures we could take to reduce this risk, and also to recalculate that in the model. Well, this is how the basic risk relief pathway looked like, and for the first part with the red box, oh, there it is again. We looked at the origin of the import, so which country did it come from? Is this country, what's the infectious, the IBR status of the country? And we went also to more detail, what is the herd level prevalence in those countries? And especially for Germany, where we get the most animals from, we had very, very detailed information. We knew where the animals from which region they came in Germany, because there's regional difference there in prevalence. And we all adjusted that in the model. So the final, you could have no, an infection node could say there's no infection, or the model continued, and well, later on the second part. So where did these animals come from? If we look at 2017, last year, we imported animals from 21 other European countries. So here the blue is the Netherlands. And the colors you see here are based on the risk of importing IBR. In the European Union, we have a regulatory IBR control, and that's called Article 10 and 9. So 10 is that you're completely free as a country of IBR, and there's a vaccination ban. The Scandinavian countries have that, and Germany, and here Switzerland and Austria. And Article 9 is that your program is found good by the European Union, and you're on your way to IBR eradication. All the red countries don't have these EU regulatory in place, so that poses a lot bigger risk. It varied from 8 cows in 2017, 8 cows we imported from Portugal, to 500,000 we got from Germany. So big numbers. Well, something on the animal infectious status. If we start here, we have the acutely infected animal, either primarily infected or from a latently infected cow that reactivates. If this cow sees a susceptible cow in near contact, this cow becomes itself acutely infected for a short period, then is latently infected. And if this cow gives birth to a calf, the calf is susceptible, but in the model we assumed that it always drank colostrum from its own mother, so it was maternally protected for at least 4 months, and after that these cows are susceptible. So these are the 4 infection statuses we put in the model. This is the second part. So here then the age comes in the model with the different infectious statuses. If the animal is not infected or acutely or latently, and then over that, the last part, if, for example, a non-infected animal went on transportation to the Netherlands, there's always a possibility that it's in a truck with infected animals. So we looked at that, the numbers of imports, the number of trucks, the amount of cows in each truck. So all this information was put into the model. Well, the model was a stochastic simulation model incorporating uncertainty using distribution, so we could also do sensitivity analysis. The program we used was at risk in Microsoft Excel, and the output of the model was stable after 5,000 iterations. Then this becomes a little mathematical, but we calculate the probability that a random cow, so for age category and for country, is infectious, so either acutely or latently, by this formula. And then, so that's on the cow level, on the animal level. Then this was multiplied by the risk per herd, so by the number of imports. Then we transformed that information to, for the vehicle, for the truck. So what's the chance one truck is infected with IBR when it enters the Netherlands? And then this gave us the results. So our outcome of interest is the number of receiving herds that import cattle infected with IBR, And we wanted to know that for the 7 different cattle herd types that I showed you, and for the type of infection, so either acutely or latently. Well, these are the results. The model predicted that 570 dairy herds get infected by IBR through import. And what you see is that it mainly is latently infected animals in the beef and suckler herds. And the acutely infected animals we find in the veal, the young veal calves, of course corresponding with their young age. So this of course sounds to a very big number, and we looked at the scenarios how we could reduce that. And for one we had 3 scenarios, and in one we detect infections cattle and prohibit the import of these animals. Another scenario was that we only get animals from countries with the EU status, and not from any other countries. And another one was to import all cattle, to set it open, but to vaccinate young animals and to check, to blood test older animals. You see GE and GB here. So we look at the DIVA concept when assessing this. If we recalculate these scenarios in the model, we get the following outcome. This is the default situation of almost 600. If we just test the animals, we can bring that down to 200. And another diminution of the amounts is when we only take from certified countries. But this is not feasible in the way that the veal industry needs a lot of veal calves. And if we would restrict it to Article 9 and Article 10 countries, they simply don't have enough calves to set up in Holland. So the industry said, well, we get the less import, but it's not practical. So this, in the long run, will be the best option. Something that also runs through this is that this model was calculated last year. It's a future model. This will be in about 10 years that this is actually happening. But in the meanwhile, a lot of other European countries are going ahead. Germany is now totally Article 10. Our Belgian, our neighbors are very close to getting there. So probably by the time this really is happening, the import risk will go down as well. So to come to the conclusion, yes, there is a substantial risk of reintroducing IBR because of imports of infectious cattle by the time we get free as a country. And there are mitigating actions we can take to even reduce this risk by testing animals and by using vaccination. This model was also can easily be adapted for other diseases. My colleague Inge Salman-Berend, she also used it for BVDV and import risk. And in the meanwhile, she presented or she publicized this study on IBR in Preventive Veterinary Medicine. So that's where you can look it up for the full text. I'd like to do some acknowledgements. The One Health for Food partnership, that was a partnership between the Dutch dairy industry companies and the Ministry of Economic Affairs. Also Wageningen University was in this project. And especially for the first study, I would like to thank Professors Mart de Jong and Mirjam Niele. In 2 years, we're in Madrid. In 4 years, we're in Cancun. And in 6 years, we hope to see you in Utrecht. We will make a bid for that. Thank you for your attention, and I'd like to take questions.